I have been reborn countless times, and each conclusion has culminated in being imprisoned and tormented by a deranged male protagonist, enduring slanderous words and oppressive actions from others. I have borne so much simply because the female lead was displeased. After my demise, the female lead's nonchalant remark of "I don't know" was sufficient to elicit the forgiveness of everyone but me. All I received in return was a mere "you deserve it." The familiar vehicle has arrived this time. It transports the male protagonist to prison and presents the paternity test to the scoundrel of a father. Gazing at my brother, who is hurling insults at me, I cannot help but chuckle softly. "Brother, you've merely injured one leg. Surely prison won't pose a problem for you." "Yeah, I am your father." I regard the man before me, whose expression is earnest, and I internally roll my eyes. Yet, I maintain a composed facade, cautiously inquiring, "Then, who are they?" "Yeah, you were taken from them. I am your biological father. I have searched for you for 19 years. As I am embraced by the man, I look up to find my adoptive parents and their families standing frozen in shock. In their timid gazes, I offer a slight smile, just as in the previous instances, and Xingye took me away from my adoptive parents' home and returned to the Yin family. As I behold the alto familiar structure and the individuals standing at the entrance, my heart remains unperturbed. "I ask it, Xingye?" The elegant woman at the forefront approaches me with urgency. And Xingye replied, then turned to me and said, "Xingye, this is your mother." The smile I had practiced in front of the mirror countless times now served its purpose. With just a slight curve of my lips, I embodied the image of a gentle and pitiable daughter in the eyes of a beautiful woman. As expected, she embraced me tightly. "Xingye has suffered," Zowen repeatedly murmured in my ear. Attempting to console me, I raised my arms to return her embrace. "Mother?" Zowen responded. "You two can catch up later. Let Xingye meet her siblings first," and Xingye interjected, interrupting Zowen's overflowing maternal affection. The siblings, who had been standing aside, stepped forward at Xingye's gesture. "This is your sister," and Xingye introduced. "This is a welcoming gift for you, Xingye." My nominal sister broke the ice amicably, taking a gift box from the butler and handing it to me. I gazed at the sister before me, who resembled a delicate white flower. With a smile, I accepted her gift. "Thank you, sister." An Xian returned a shy smile. Standing beside her, the eldest son of the Yin family, who had been watching with his arms crossed, remained silent. My half-brother, Guangzhou, snorted derisively, ready to make a sarcastic remark. However, an Xian tugged at his sleeve, instantly deflating his bravado. I maintained my smile. Gazing at this seemingly disjointed family before me, I realized it had indeed been a long time since we last met. This marks either my 13th or 14th attempt. I can scarcely recall that in any case, I have met my demise over a dozen times. Upon realizing that I had traversed into another realm, I discovered that I had assumed the role of a secondary character. Although I entertained thoughts of turning the tide, it became evident that regardless of whether I opposed or supported the protagonist, the slightest dissatisfaction from her would inevitably lead to a fate best described as tragic. In this narrative, the protagonist is none other than my opportunistic sister, an Xian who has usurped my rightful place for 19 years, fearing expulsion from the Yin family. I once confided my apprehensions to the male counterpart during a drunken stupor. Subsequently, the secondary character found herself ensnared in a harrowing series of school violence. Plagued by insecurities regarding her appearance, which paled in comparison to the protagonist's radiance, she suffered disfigurement. Moreover, the inheritance left to her by the Yin family was meager compared to that of others. Before long, the situation grew dire. The orchestrator behind it all was the male lead, whose sole aim was to elicit a smile from his beloved. I end this illogical realm, where nonsensical events transpire. The absurd becomes rational within the confines of a Mary Sue narrative. Take, for instance, the gift box in my possession, once cherished for its benevolence, now opened in solitude. What awaited me was the suffocating presence of a toad. Yet, due to Nzin's innocence and Nguang's defense, the act was deemed a jealousy-fueled conspiracy against her. An Xian was fully aware of the truth, yet when questioned, she could only weep. From the very beginning, I was met with disdain by the Yin family. My patience had been thoroughly exhausted after numerous attempts, as I gazed at the object in my hands. With a smile, I inquired, "May I open it now?" "Of course," an Xian nodded. Disregarding the anxious expression of Guangzhou beside me, I untied the ribbon and opened the box. Upon revealing the contents within, I was startled. And the next moment, Zowen, standing beside me, shrieked and knocked the box over. A toad leaped out of the box, making a beeline for Nguangzhou. Everyone was thrown into chaos by this unexpected turn of events. As I watched the toad poised to leap into Nguangzhou's clothing, I hurled the box in its direction. In redirecting the toad, the box struck Nguangzhou squarely on the nose. Before anyone could react, I stepped on the toad, which lay on the ground, and glanced at the pale-faced and Xian. "Is this a gift from my sister? It's quite unique, yet somewhat frightening," she replied. Qingye was the first to regain his composure, his piercing gaze scrutinizing an Xian. "Ye has just returned as her sister. Your actions are deeply disappointing," and Xian, the delicate flower, appeared on the verge of tears. "And oh, no, it wasn't me," she protested, her voice trembling. Just as Qingye seemed poised to speak again, and Guangzhou clutched his injured nose, he muttered, "What I did has nothing to do with an Xian. Who knows if she is truly a biological child of the Yin family? That couple, capable of such actions once, could easily do so again." "You!" and Qingye exclaimed, exasperated. I observed in Guangzhou's desperate attempts at justification with a cold gaze, retreating into the comforting embrace of Ms. Zhou. "Mom, am I truly your child?" Upon hearing this, Zhou immediately interjected, raising her voice to interrupt the standoff between the father and son. "And Qingye, you manage your own son. Ye is my daughter, do not presume to take advantage of me." With that, she attempted to pull me into the house. We passed by an Xian, who stood frozen in place. As our eyes met, I offered her a malicious smile. Seeing her expression of terror brought me immense satisfaction. "I have endured your antics for many lifetimes. Whoever continues to endure shall be the lesser. It is merely a matter of starting anew. Who is afraid of whom?" Having received a wake-up call, Nguangzhou sat particularly quietly at the dining table. When Qingye began to speak about my academic matters, and Xian had already regained her composure, she seized the opportunity to ask, "Is Xiaoyu going to Qizhong? Would you like to be in the same class as me?" "Yes, your sister is in Class A at Qizhong and is also the president of the student council. You should go and have her introduce you to some friends." Qingye's introduction made Nzin's complexion brighten, as she spoke words of humility. In their harmonious exchange, my transfer of academic records was solidified. I can hardly bring myself to care. After countless repetitions, I have grown utterly weary of that. College entrance examination paper. As the conversation between the two intermittently waned, the clinking of my knife and fork against the plate produced a jarring sound, drawing the attention of everyone present. I set down my utensils and said, "I apologize, I am somewhat unaccustomed to this." Qingye furrowed his brow and instructed someone to bring me chopsticks instead. "Yeah, during this period, perhaps you should focus on learning some etiquette at home. You know, the students at the 7th middle school come from affluent backgrounds." He left the latter part of his statement unspoken, yet it was clear to all. I picked up a piece of beef and savored it slowly. Indeed, since I have just returned, there are certain things I need to learn. Madame Zhou beside me gently ruffled my hair, expressing her remorse. "Now that I am back, when shall I introduce you to your biological parents? I can take you to meet them. They are quite amiable. Though they have a penchant for gambling and exhibit a slight preference for sons over daughters, and they can be somewhat indolent. They nearly sold me off to an old man, but it's hardly a grave concern. A single kitchen knife held before them could resolve such matters. As a quintessential Mary Sue protagonist, I ought to be more formidable than this." Nzin's complexion turned ashen, and the knife and fork in her hand clattered to the ground with a piercing clang. "Yeah," and Qingye cast me a warning glance. Although Xian was replaced, she was merely a child at that time, an innocent victim. 18 years of affection cannot simply be severed. Our beloved daughter, nurtured within the Yin family, deserves far better than to be treated as an afterthought by those unworthy. Please refrain from discussing this further." I shrugged in understanding, yet across from me, an Xian lowered her head, tears streaming down her cheeks, each drop falling with a certain elegance. As anticipated, the flower protector, Nguangzhou, slammed his hand on the table. "Anu, I advise you not to overstep your bounds, and Xian is the rightful heiress of the Yin family." In the next moment, I found myself compelled to shed tears under his fierce gaze. "Father, mother, I apologize for my misguided words that have caused you distress." As I was embraced by Ms. Zhou for comfort, and Guang was immediately deprived of 2 months' worth of living expenses. In a fit of anger, Guang stormed out. slamming the door behind him with a resounding bang. And Xian, taken aback by this sudden turn of events, found herself momentarily speechless, her tears momentarily halted. Before she hurriedly interceded on Nguang's behalf. After all, who hasn't shed tears in 3 seconds? Yet, ultimately, Xingya resolved to expedite my enrollment in school, citing the imminent demands of the senior year. On my first day of transfer, Xian and I arrived at the school gate in the family's luxurious car. As the protagonist of this narrative, Xian had already achieved a level of renown at the 7th high school, even reaching a status akin to that of a goddess. Suddenly, she found herself with a sister. The family publicly proclaimed that they were merely reclaiming their second daughter. In an institution like the 7th high school, teeming with pampered scions whose minds often seemed to wander, it was to be expected that they would conjure up a plethora of nonsensical ideas. Thus, when I noticed the vacant seat adorned with malicious graffiti and the chair mysteriously vanished, I was hardly surprised. Such tactics had been all too familiar in the previous cycles. Everyone's gaze, whether intentional or not, scrutinized me. Among them, the unabashedly hostile stares originated from the last row of the classroom. This book's secondary male character, along with the female antagonist, was the principal instigator of the campus violence. With my backpack slung over my shoulder, I made my way towards the back of the classroom. The boy seated there cast a disdainful glance in my direction. "Transfer student, your seat is over there. Didn't you see?" Too weary to listen to his incessant prattle, I channeled the resentment of my past lives and kicked his chair from beneath him. He toppled forward, both himself and the desk. I stepped on his book and lifted the chair. "Thank you for your chair. I look forward to your guidance, oh benevolent classmate," I said, casually retrieving a piece of paper to dry my hands. "Justice may be delayed, but it arrives nonetheless." With a voice soft and sweet, yet carrying an undeniable authority, the student council president interrogated, "Xiao Yu, how can you bully a fellow student?" I clicked my tongue impatiently. The second male lead, who had just been sprawled on the floor, scrambled to his feet at the moment the goddess arrived, attempting to maintain his precarious facade. And Xian hurried to console him. "I apologize. My sister is new and somewhat unaware." The goddess lowered her tone to apologize, while the second male lead swallowed his resentment, managing a strained smile as he clutched his abdomen. "Xiao Yu, apologize." I dismissed her with indifference, tapping on the desk beside me. "Sister, is this my seat from now on?" And Xian, momentarily at a loss for words upon seeing the defaced desk, faltered. "This unnamed classmate informed me that this desk is mine. But there is no chair here, so I borrowed one from him. After all, he is so eager to help. I shall assist you in cleaning." And Xian tore open a wet tissue and lowered her head to begin wiping the table. And Xian was undoubtedly aware of the underlying reasons. Her vague expressions to the outside world, coupled with her refusal to explain, led everyone to believe that I was the illegitimate daughter of the family, which is why I was subjected to such treatment. She adeptly embodied the image of a victim standing on moral high ground. "This kind-hearted classmate, my sister just defended you. Shouldn't you express your gratitude?" I casually took a pack of wet tissues and handed it to the second male lead. "My sister is tirelessly cleaning the table alone. Please lend a hand as a gesture of gratitude." The female protagonist, with an air of pitiful entreaty, found herself at my behest, while the second male lead was also persuaded to assist. At this juncture, adhering to the conventions of a Mary Sue narrative, one must inevitably rise to champion the protagonist's cause. As anticipated, a girl with wavy hair, who had just been seated in front of the second male lead, stepped forward with her arms crossed. "And Xian, you are far too easy to bully. A mere illegitimate child dares to throw a tantrum at you. If it were me, I would have simply given her a slap so she could recognize her rightful place." "No, that is not the case," and Xian softly protested. The second male lead, suddenly enlightened, snatched the damp tissue from an Xian's hand and tossed it aside. "You are the eldest daughter of the family, a mere illegitimate child. How dare she?" "An illegitimate child? This label, which had clung to me in previous lives, has resurfaced in the words of others. I gazed at an Exion with a hint of amusement. Sister, is this how you choose to introduce me? An Exion, with her pale face, shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. What? Are you aware that being an illegitimate child is disreputable? Who gave you the audacity to bully an Exion? The girl seemed to have seized upon my vulnerability, relentlessly pressing her advantage. It was always the same. No matter how much I distanced myself from the protagonist, I would inexplicably fall victim to bullying and be unjustly labeled an illegitimate child. When the truth eventually came to light, it would be met with a dismissive "you brought this upon yourself." The true instigator would shed a few tears casually, and everyone would magnanimously forgive her minor transgressions on behalf of the victim. It was merely a misunderstanding. Why hold a grudge? As I saw the girl's sharp fingers poised to strike, I swiftly grasped her wrist, causing her to scream in pain. Sister, is it true? Am I an illegitimate child? I released my clenched fist, and the girl covered her hand, her eyes filled with trepidation. I turned my head to glance at Anshin, who was hiding behind the second male lead. I have never claimed that Xiaoya is an illegitimate child, Anshin stammered. Upon hearing this, the expressions of the second male lead and the others darkened. Then who am I? You are the child of your father and mother. Who are you? I am an Exion. Her eyes were filled with a plea. This gaze was familiar to me. I had once implored everyone more than once, begging them to spare me. Yet it proved futile, leading me to abandon reliance on others. Depending on oneself is the wisest choice. However, the favored child of fate remains oblivious, for her path has been effortlessly smooth. Then let me rephrase the question. Why have I been adrift for 18 years? Dear sister, as the president of the student council, could you kindly elucidate the matter for everyone? I fear my expression may not convey the message clearly. It is because Xiaoyu was born and was switched at birth. Who is it that has exchanged 18 years of life with me? What are you all doing here? Class is about to start, remarked the boy who entered, furrowing his brow as he pulled the nearly distraught an Exion away, dispersing the crowd. Truly, as the heroine, she always has someone to her rescue. I cast a glance at the boy who had taken an Exion away, letting out a soft chuckle. I wiped away the remaining doodles on the table with a tissue before taking my seat. Dear student with a warm heart, why do you linger here instead of seeking a chair to sit upon? The second male character, fixated on the retreating figures of the two individuals, huffed in response to my reminder and dashed out in pursuit. I yearned to follow and witness the unfolding drama. Yet there were matters of greater significance than mere entertainment that demanded my attention. After a drowsy mathematics class came to an end, and Guangzhou, who had run away from home, made his appearance at the entrance of Class A. Whom are you searching for, brother? I initiated the conversation, and Guangzhou attempted to push me away with his hand, but I evaded his gesture, maintaining a distance of an arm's length between us. Inform an Exion that I have come to see her, and Guangzhou instructed impatiently. She is not here. After going out with a boy, she hasn't attended a single class. Where else could she go if not to class? In Guangzhou resembled a husband betrayed, consumed by exasperation. I am not certain. And Guangzhou raised his foot to seek someone, but after taking just a couple of steps, he turned back. Without hesitation, he extended his hand, requesting, "Transfer 2,000 to me. Brother, I earn only 5,000 a month. Do as you're told and refrain from unnecessary chatter," and Guangzhou threatened, exuding an air of hostility. Just as he reached out to grasp my arm, I raised my hand and delivered a sharp slap to his face. A vivid imprint of my palm appeared on the delicate visage of the infamily scion, and Guangzhou, poised to retaliate, found himself restrained as I seized his collar, rendering him immobile. I leaned closer and whispered in his ear, "Brother, it would be prudent for you to exercise caution lately. After all, one can never predict when the casino might come under scrutiny. Just consider whether our father would come to your rescue." I gently patted his cheek, observing the astonishment in his eyes. Furthermore, I do not appreciate others using profanity towards me. Brother, I expect you to speak to me with courtesy from now on. Do you understand? Releasing his collar, and Guangzhou stood upright in a daze, as if still processing the situation. Very well. You may now go to the rooftop to find your sister. She is so kind. She would surely be willing to transfer money to you. And Guangzhou wandered off in a daze. Suppressing my burgeoning curiosity, I too yearned to open a blind box. I was uncertain who currently cradled the female lead in their embrace. Regardless, and Guangzhou would undoubtedly be infuriated. Indeed, as soon as school ended, I spotted an Xian, who had vanished for an entire afternoon, trailing behind and Guangzhou with her head bowed. Occasionally, she attempted to reach out and pull him back, only to be brushed aside. As I observed their approach, I lowered the car window and inquired, "Are you heading home today to retrieve some money, brother?" And Guangzhou's stride faltered. Who is going home? Take her away. Stop following me. Brother, you have not returned for 3 days. Our parents miss you dearly. Please do not be angry, all right? Anshin spoke with gentle persuasion. Noticing a glimmer of softness in Guangzhou's expression, Anshin seized the opportunity and glanced at me with a silent signal. Xiao Yu, please persuade your brother. A family should not harbor grudges overnight. Let go of the anger. Since you long for home and the prosperity it brings, I entrust the weighty responsibility of persuading our brother to return home to you. I await your good news at home. Glancing outside the car window at the two astonished faces, I leaned back against the seat and addressed the driver. Please drive on. The brother and sister require a bit of personal space. Miss this. Driving. Sitting in the car, I ponder the likelihood of Guangzhou returning tonight. I decide it would be prudent to address certain matters in advance. After all, enduring the sight of his face day after day stirs my pent-up frustration. At the dinner table, Guangzhou appears as if the Cold War of the past 3 days never transpired, engaging in cheerful conversation with Yicheng. Father, today I come to apologize to both you and Mother. My attitude that day was inappropriate, which caused you to feel anger. Home is where harmony flourishes. I beseech you and Mother to forgive my thoughtlessness. As dinner concluded, Guangzhou took the initiative to broach the subject, even offering a sincere apology. Although I was the one who should have received the apology, and Yicheng merely sought a means to pardon his son. Thus, he graciously stepped in to grant him forgiveness on my behalf. In the future, you and Xiaoxin and Xiaoya will be a family. You are the elder brother and must take care of your 2 younger sisters, do you understand? In Yicheng feigned seriousness. And Guangzhou, appearing to be enlightened, replied, Thanks to Xiaoxin today, I have come to realize just how profoundly mistaken I was. Oh, what did she convey to you? Home harmony leads to prosperity. The unity and peace of a family is of utmost importance, said Guangzhou. Well, truly a remarkable child I have raised, and Yicheng exclaimed with great admiration. And Xian, feeling bashful, lowered her head with a soft smile. Xiao Yu, you should learn more from your sister. Do you understand? Indeed, Xiaoxin has been raised by me single-handedly. In the future, should Xiaoya encounter any difficulties, she may seek help from her. Mrs. Zhou responded with a sense of relief when mentioning Anshin. As I peeled the orange in my hand and popped a segment into my mouth, the sourness jolted me awake. Father, could you possibly grant me a little more pocket money in the future? And Yicheng furrowed his brow, disapproving. Why? In Guangzhou, both Xiaoxin and I receive 5,000 each month, and we have never claimed it insufficient. I cast a glance at the two across from me, feigning sincerity once more. Today, I came to realize that my sister not only spends money on herself each month, but also occasionally supports my brother. It truly is quite arduous. Moreover, my sister already has a boyfriend, which means there will be even more expenses in the future. If this continues, it will become quite burdensome. Father, in the future, please provide me with more. I shall assist my sister in alleviating her burdens. As I uttered the final sentence, I noticed the two of them eagerly preparing to offer their explanations. My brother would perhaps grow fonder of me and refrain from scolding me. I have not. You are talking nonsense. The voices of two individuals, eager to defend themselves, overlapped. Is that so? I tilted my head slightly. Isn't the boy who skipped class with your sister her boyfriend? After planting a seed of doubt, I was urged by Ms. Zhou to return to my room. And Guangzhou and an Xin were called into the study by the irate Yicheng, who was struggling to contain his temper. Before long, the sharp sound of glass shattering echoed through the two doors, accompanied by an Yicheng's furious voice questioning and Guangzhou. How old are you? How dare you go to such a place? Following this were an Yicheng's tirades, interspersed with Guangzhou's sobs and an Xin's attempts at consolation. I pushed the door open, intending to enjoy the spectacle, when Ms. Zhou appeared in the corridor, holding a platter of fruit, standing outside the door. The expression of schadenfreude on her face instantly vanished. She obediently called out, "Mom, Dad, and brother are too loud. I'm scared." Ms. Zhou indicated with her eyes. And I promptly took the fruit platter from her. Though I am aware of your aversion towards Guangzhou, do not let it go too far, understand? Ms. Zhou whispered to me before her departure. I watched her descend the stairs, handbag in hand. As I peeled a banana, I reflected on Ms. Zhou's unwavering cleverness. Yet, her feeble and indecisive nature would ultimately lead to her downfall. Were I in her position, I would never permit an illegitimate child, older than my own offspring, to roam freely under my watchful gaze. I pondered who had finally broken the proverbial camel's back. And Yechen's voice, clamoring for familial discipline, echoed throughout the villa, as I observed the butler hesitating at the entrance with a stick in hand. Discarding the banana peel, I stepped forward. "Uncle, allow me to assist my father." Without waiting for his consent, I seized the stick and knocked on the door. Inside the study, shattered ashtrays littered the floor, papers strewn about, and an enraged father confronted a pair of pitiful siblings. This scene was unlike anything I had witnessed before, and I found immense amusement in it. "Why have you come?" And Yechen inquired with a hint of annoyance. I noticed the butler's hesitation, so I took the initiative to bring it in for him. I handed the stick to Yechen. "Is it my elder brother who must endure the family's discipline? And you? What do you think you are? A filthy bastard." With a sharp crack, the stick struck flesh, producing a crisp and resonant sound. And Guangzhou let out a muffled groan, clutching his arm as he collapsed to the ground. Breathing heavily, and Yichen gripped the stick, panting with fury. Guangzhou, have the lessons I imparted to you been fed to the dogs? This is your own sister. Yet you continuously utter such vile words. At such a tender age, you dare to gamble with money. Today, I shall impart to you the essence of discipline." With each strike, the stick met flesh, producing a resounding crack that echoed through the air. It was sufficient to bring the pampered young master to his knees. And Guangzhou writhed on the ground, tears and snot streaming down his face. From his initial defiance, he devolved into a mere whimper, pleading, "Daddy, I realize my mistakes." And Xin, weeping like a rain-soaked pear blossom, clung to Yecheng's leg, desperately beseeching him to cease. Upon meeting an Xin's imploring gaze, I could not suppress a growing smile. I uttered a single word to her from afar, "Deserved." When Yecheng finally grew weary, he relinquished the stick and took a seat to catch his breath. He turned to me and said, "Xiaoya, return to your room and rest. We have school tomorrow." And Yecheng, the wily old fox, now fully aware of the trap he had fallen into, merely cast a warning glance in my direction. The two on the floor, disheveled and miserable, helped each other rise. What a pity it was that I hadn't captured the moment on my phone. However, time is ample and opportunities will arise. I picked up the stick that had fallen to the ground and casually returned it to the butler standing at the door. Once back in my room, I retrieved my phone, opened an unnamed contact, and dialed. "This week, and Guangzhou will not be coming. We shall wait until next week." After receiving a lesson, and Guangzhou behaved himself for a few days, but once his injuries healed, he reappeared at the entrance of the casino. I stood at the window of the room directly facing the casino entrance, with the phone call still connected. I watched as Guangzhou beseeched the doorman to grant him entry. He spoke into the phone, saying, "Just today." The in-family residence was brightly lit in the late hours. I was seated on the sofa, eyes closed, attempting to catch up on sleep, while an Xin, also on the sofa, remained restlessly agitated. "Xiaoyu, are you aware of what transpired?" In the realm of Mary Sue novels, The female protagonists are often imbued with a captivating fragrance, and an Xin is no exception. As she drew closer, an intoxicating aroma enveloped me. I extended my hand, urging her to maintain a distance of half an arm's length from me. "Speak your mind, but do not come so close," an Xin bit her lip. Feeling aggrieved as she settled herself, and inquired once more, "Who wouldn't be anxious about losing a substantial sum of money?" I replied. When Guangzhou was brought back, he appeared utterly disheveled. His clothing was torn with a considerable gash, and with the rain pouring outside, he resembled a drenched chicken. Under normal circumstances, the steward would have prepared hot tea and towels in advance, but today, as the condemned, he was only deserving of kneeling. And Yecheng and Madame Zhou sat in the prominent positions, looking down upon the person on the ground. "Return what you have taken, and we shall consider it settled," said Yecheng. "No, there's nothing left," and Guangzhou said, withdrawing her head. "Is it gone? 8 million vanished in a single night?" And Yecheng slammed his chair, the sound echoing ominously. Ms. Zhou attempted to pacify the agitated Yecheng, leaning in to inquire, "What have you spent it on? 8 million is no trifling amount. What could possibly warrant such a tumult?" And Guang remained silent, and in the next moment, Yecheng stood up, raising his foot to kick him down. "Have you gambled again? Have you? Have I been too indulgent with you? 8 million, gone just like that. What a calamity. Father, perhaps my brother has his reasons. Please do not act this way. His injury is still healing." The female protagonist had no recollection of when she had swiftly moved from the sofa to stand protectively in front of Guizhou. And Guizhou stumbled from the kick, and then, suppressing the pain, clung to Yecheng's leg, weeping forlornly. "I am helpless. If I do not repay the debt, they will sever my fingers. I am utterly terrified, which is why I acted this way. Father, I truly realize my mistake this time." And Yecheng gasped for breath, pointing at Guangzhou, who had been rendered speechless for quite some time. Ultimately, all his frustration was unleashed upon an Xin who stood protectively in front of Guangzhou. "This is the plight of your brother. Knowing full well that the family is advancing a collaborative project, the 8 million vanished without a trace. Get out of my sight." And Guangzhou remained stubbornly unwilling to leave. After finishing an entire orange, I spoke up. "Perhaps you should step outside for a moment of reflection, dear brother. For our father is currently quite upset at the sight of you. Do you intend to drive him to his grave with anger?" "You." I met his gaze, filled with resentment, and I smiled mockingly, baring my teeth. Perhaps my words were coarse, yet my reasoning was sound. The calm protagonist from Guangzhou was awakened to the moment. She leaned in and whispered something in his ear, persuading him to depart. He left, glancing back every 10 steps like a dutiful son. Well, the most pressing matter at hand is how to mend the hole he has made. Ms. Zhou urged Yecheng to remain calm. I shifted my position on the sofa, observing Yecheng's anxious demeanor, and once again marveled at Ms. Zhou's composure. Despite having the means to effortlessly produce 8 million from her account, she chose to sit here, observing with a detached gaze. Isn't my sister on good terms with the class monitor? The class leader hails from one of the most distinguished families in City A. A mere mention from his sister could easily summon 800,000, wouldn't it? After Yecheng's one-sided discussion yielded no results, I ventured to propose. An Xin, who had just composed herself, looked up in alarm and exclaimed, No, it's not that. He and I are merely good friends." "Indeed. A true friend should be willing to stand by you through thick and thin. I firmly believe that as long as my sister speaks up, your good friend will undoubtedly assist our family in overcoming this difficult predicament. At that time, you shall be the greatest benefactor of our family, won't you?" I encouraged him perfunctorily. Like a drowning man grasping at a straw, and Yecheng fixated on an Xin, his tone fervent. "Xiao Xin. I have heard that the class monitor of your class comes from the wealthiest family in City A. Well, wonderful. I often encourage you to cultivate friendships, and Xiaoxin, you have done remarkably well. If you succeed this time, you shall be the great benefactor of our family. Whatever you desire, your father will fulfill for you. How about asking your good friend for a loan?" Though framed as a question, the tone was imbued with an unmistakable air of authority. The protagonist, who typically resembled a parasitic flower, offered little resistance and hesitantly acquiesced. Observing the scene of paternal kindness and filial devotion before me, my smile broadened, for at last, everyone had arrived. Encountering in Guangzhou, who had been cast out of his home on my way back from school, did not surprise me in the least. I would need to take the initiative to dismiss the driver to provide him with an opportunity. It is you, this little wretch, who spoke so carelessly that day, leaving me without a home. The scent emanating from Guangzhou, who had been wandering the streets for several days, was indescribable. I scrunched my nose and instinctively recoiled. Little did I know my actions would lead to a grave misunderstanding on his part. He drew a knife from his pocket, brandishing it before my eyes. Only now do you realize the fear? It is too late. Upon investigation, it appears that you possess a considerable sum of money in your account, you little rascal. Transfer all the funds to my account now, and I shall merely slap you once. How does that sound? The mere recollection of how he had recklessly collided with my car, all for the sake of a few million in insurance money, made the thought of a single slap seem like a generous reprieve. Observing the buffoonish antics of Guangzhou before me, I couldn't help but let out a laugh. In an instant, the enraged Guangzhou seized my collar, warning me, "Do not refuse a toast, and instead seek punishment." Has my brother been enduring great hardship lately? Homelessness coupled with debt collection must be truly arduous. Are you investigating me? I truly feel for you, but dear sister, I am currently living quite well. Father holds her in particularly high regard. Would you like to know the reason why? Wherefore? Because, I elongated my voice, casting away the final bait. My sister's dear friend happens to be the only son of the wealthiest man in City A. Casual pocket money exceeds the amount in my card by several-fold, and it is exceedingly generous. I have heard that there is a plan to grant our family 8 million to help us navigate through these challenging times. Brother's difficulties, I believe, can easily be overcome if sister merely speaks up. What do you think? And Guangzhou released his grip, and I promptly distanced myself from my previous position. It was unbearable. I wanted to escape. I took out my phone and unblocked Guangzhou from my WeChat blacklist. I transferred him 1,000. Consider this money as a token of my goodwill. Take it, enjoy a meal, perhaps acquire a new outfit. My sister has been persistently speaking of you lately. After cunningly deceiving the foolish and malevolent Guangzhou, I immediately discarded the coat that he had touched, tossing it into the trash. It was utterly revolting. Recently, the Yin family has elevated an Xin to an exalted status, gratifying her vanity to an extreme degree. Yicheng inquires daily about when the funds will arrive, and the moment an Xin furrows her brow, he falls silent. It is no jest. With their fortunes and lives entrusted to the situation, who wouldn't be cautious? However, in recent days, an Xin has repeatedly neglected to return home for meals. Yicheng, in a state of agitation, has instructed someone to investigate her whereabouts. I leisurely peeled the shrimp in my hands, savoring it as I contemplated that the desperate Guangzhou must be seeking out his dear sister. The pressures at home, coupled with an Xin's acute awareness that should she request financial assistance, her relationship with the male protagonist would inevitably deteriorate, have led to a trifecta of burdens weighing upon her. Faced with such strain, it is only natural to feel a sense of rebellion. Having sent the meticulously crafted message, I shall lend her a helping hand, aiding her in extricating herself from this perilous situation. Has she gone to find her biological parents? Yicheng threw the information he had discovered onto the floor, pacing furiously in the living room. Once again, it is a treacherous ingrate, a treacherous ingrate. Isn't it simply asking her to speak up for a loan to assist her family, only to immediately turn her back? These past 19 years have truly been spent nurturing two ungrateful wretches. Ms. Zhou was not at home. I was the only one he managed to draw in to witness this personal criticism conference. Occasionally, I would chime in with a few remarks. It was only when he grew weary and took a seat that he remembered there was another person beside him. Xiao Yu. You must still remember where your adoptive parents reside. Go and bring your sister back, came the command in an authoritative tone. Coincidentally, I was also headed there. So I readily agreed. Upon arriving at the place I had lived for 19 years, a middle-aged woman clad in a heavy padded coat spotted me and immediately quickened her pace towards me. "Why have you come? Are you here for a meal? I shall prepare meatballs for you." Upon seeing me, my adoptive mother immediately donned a sycophantic expression. "Where are the things?" I could not be bothered to engage with her hypocritical demeanor and directly pierced through the faade. A phone card was handed to me. I advised her to turn off her phone for a few days to allow herself some respite and to contemplate her strategies before confronting the situation. Afterward, I discreetly replaced the SIM card, and she was utterly oblivious. The adoptive mother began to recount her experience in detail. "I sincerely hope so. I accepted the SIM card. The funds have been transferred to you. The remaining matters shall be concluded by you. I hope that while I adhere to the contract, you will also uphold your integrity." The foster mother immediately nodded and assured once she confirmed the receipt of the money. "Shall you? What brings you here?" The suddenly appearing heroine hurriedly ran over, positioning herself protectively in front of her adoptive mother. "Are you here to compel me to return? If you harbor resentment towards me for this, direct it at me. But please do not make things difficult for her." From the very outset, she assumes the role of a victim. With remarkable courage, an XIN confronts the perceived villain, her mastery of the situation evident. I cast a glance at my anxious foster mother and the indignant XIN, letting out a derisive laugh. "You may stay for as long as you wish. No one is here to rush you." Once seated in the car, she replaced the female protagonist's SIM card and deleted all unwanted messages. She located the male protagonist's contact information and, imitating the female protagonist's tone, lamented the recent events. After sending the message, regardless of the response, she promptly turned off her phone. Is this not the essence of obsessive love? Let me witness the extent of your obsession. Before long, news arrived that Nguangzhou had been struck by a vehicle. Truly, fortune ebbs and flows. In a previous life, he had rendered me a cripple for insurance money. Now, the male protagonist forces Nguangzhou into a similar fate for love. He deserves it. Another sacrifice for the ashtray. Recently, Yeqing has been increasing his medication intake. The company faces financial troubles, and the only hope he had, his rebellious adopted daughter, is not returning home. To make matters worse, his only son has been hit, and the perpetrator remains elusive. A moment's reflection reveals that Nguangzhou has entangled himself with the wrong individuals. It is fortunate he is merely hospitalized with one leg injured, though he professes a desire to rid himself of Nguangzhou as his only son. Yeqing hurriedly made his way to the hospital. I turned on my phone, which had been off for several days. A flurry of messages from the male protagonist flooded in, and I patiently responded. I arranged to meet him tonight at the place where the female protagonist first encountered the male protagonist, promising him a surprise. Just as in all those Mary Sue novels, the innocent heroine's first meeting with the obsessive male lead was when she saved a boy gasping for breath in a dark alley. From that moment on, the young man became the devoted servant of the delicate female protagonist, responding instantly to her every command. Ms. Zhou has recently been frequently leaving home early and returning late. Though I am aware of her activities, I choose to remain uninvolved. It is evident that when Ms. Zhou is determined, she transforms into a sharp sword. Yicheng also seems to be spending nights at the hospital or elsewhere, aligning perfectly with my expectations. Dressed for agility, I set off to meet the male lead for our appointment. One wonders what goes on in the male lead's mind. He arrives promptly at such an absurd rendezvous location. Perhaps this is the enchanting allure of an ancient tale. Upon arrival, I found the male lead already waiting in place. I took a circuitous route to approach him from behind. I must admit, his vigilance is commendable. Even as I stealthily drew near, he sensed my presence. However, I was quicker. After previous failures in past lives, I had cultivated an awareness of self-defense. Before he could fully discern my identity, I struck him down with a swift kick, rendering him incapacitated. I quickly donned the black hood I had prepared for him and seized the opportunity to knock him unconscious with the stick in my hand. I compelled you to embrace a twisted love. I bestowed upon you wealth that could sway even the most sinister forces. And I instilled in you a penchant for the cruel torment of innocent creatures. Each subsequent step was imbued with my seething hatred, merely because he was the male protagonist. He could cavalierly traverse the precipice of crime, indulging his whims. Once, he deprived the female lead of her rightful inheritance, relegating her to a dark, sunless basement where he subjected her to torment. In her final moments, he callously presented her with the sight of my wretched state. And Xin was horrified by my emaciated form, yet her eyes shimmered with an inexplicable light. "Is that you, Xiao Yu?" With every ounce of strength, I spat blood towards her. In the next heartbeat, the male protagonist extinguished my life. My last audible thought was an Xin lamenting the stain I had left on her dress. The mere recollection of those tortures intensified the weight upon my feet. When he had been stripped of all but the barest flesh, I unleashed a high-priced software from the black market to completely format his phone, erasing all traces of his misdeeds. Then, like a discarded dog, I overturned him and viciously stomped upon his lower half. As he stirred awake in agony, I swiftly rendered him unconscious once more. How do you like that? Your male protagonist has been utterly ruined by my hand. I raised my middle finger to the heavens. Dismissing notions of fate and narrative design, I would no longer play along. The following day, the scion of the wealthiest family was detained for multiple criminal offenses, including orchestrating a hit on an Xin in Guangzhou and subsequently became a trending topic. An undeniable truth, impervious even to the wealthiest, stands firm. One watches helplessly as the sole heir is sentenced to prison. In the hospital in Guangzhou, upon seeing the news, erupts into unrestrained laughter. Since he became lame, his temperament has grown increasingly sullen. Now, with the knowledge that the perpetrator who caused his affliction has met with justice, he naturally feels a sense of joy. "Serves you right," he shouted. I pushed open the door. "Is brother in a good mood lately?" Ignoring his suddenly sullen expression, I took a seat beside the hospital bed. "Where are you? What about Xiaoxin? Why hasn't she come?" "Are you referring to an Xin, brother? You are not aware, are you? A few days ago, she severed ties with our family. This decision was incited by her adoptive family's instigation." The female protagonist resolutely declared her disassociation from An Yicheng, infuriating him to no end. Her tendency to remember grievances rather than kindness, and to discard those who do not meet her expectations, remains unchanged through the ages. At that time, the male lead had yet to face his downfall, and the female protagonist possessed a certain strength in her conviction. She vividly portrayed herself as a pitiful child who had been fostered by the Yin family for 19 years. An Yicheng found himself unable to refuse her request and ultimately signed the document. One can only imagine how the female protagonist feels now, having learned the news. And how An Yicheng might react. The thought brings a smile. "Is it you? Is it you who has been stirring up trouble, causing all of this? Little bastard. Ever since the day you returned, there has been no peace in this house." An exclamation burst forth from Nguang, as if he had suddenly been awakened, his voice echoing through the confines of the hospital bed. I tilted my head, observing his impotent fury. "What's the difference? For now, you should focus on how to cope with being a cripple." At that moment, the door to the hospital room was pushed open from the outside. Upon recognizing the visitor, and Guangzhou's eyes gleamed with excitement. "Father, it is precisely this little rascal." She confessed that everything during this period was meticulously orchestrated by her. Even the debts I was pursued for were her doing, it was all her. Just as he anticipated my humiliation, he was abruptly struck across the face. An Yicheng clenched the paper report in his hand, exclaiming, no wonder, you despicable wretch." "Father?" And Guizhou, covering his face, gazed at An Yicheng in disbelief. An Yicheng appeared as if entranced, murmuring to himself, "Indeed, it is no wonder that An Yicheng has such a son. It turns out to be the cunning scheme of that woman, a bastard." As she spoke, she attempted to strike him, but was stopped by An Guangzhou, who swiftly grasped her hand. "Father, what is the matter?" "Why, do not call me father. I am not the father of a wretched offspring like you. And Yecheng attempted to pull Guangzhou away, and during the struggle, the paper report slipped from his grasp. I bent down to retrieve it and recited the final passage aloud. According to the results of the DNA test, the individual in Guangzhou and the paternal sample and Yecheng exhibit discrepancies in 13 genetic loci, indicating a lack of biological father-son relationship. As if triggered, and Guangzhou instinctively struggled. Already burdened by recent events, a person with 3 high-risk health conditions had just fainted in anger. Now, in an unfortunate mishap, he was pushed by Guangzhou, toppling downwards. He struck the back of his head against the corner of the table and lost consciousness, blood seeping from the wound, while Guangzhou stood frozen in shock. I ceased the video recording on my phone and let out a disapproving click of my tongue. It seems that you have already found a way forward for the latter half of your life? When Ms. Zhou arrived at the hospital, and Guangzhou had already been taken to the police station, while Yecheng was undergoing emergency treatment. What is the matter? Ms. Zhou inquired with a furrowed brow after signing the contract. Is mother inquiring about me? I raised my gaze towards Mrs. Zhou. The specific situation is that my father accompanied my aunt to her prenatal checkup and inadvertently discovered that Guangzhou is not his biological child. During the scuffle, I inadvertently fell to the ground, striking the back of my head. Fortunately, I recorded the video to prove that it was Guangzhou who acted. Now, my father is in critical condition, Ms. Zhou said as she glanced towards the woman sitting not far away, clutching her abdomen. In the next moment, she playfully tapped my head, chiding, "Mind your own business." I protested, "But hasn't Mom been in touch with those uncles at the company lately? I just wanted to help." The entire family was already aware of Yecheng's extramarital affairs, which prompted Ms. Zhou to hasten her return to her career. It would not be long before Yecheng realized that he had been sidelined. To prevent him from becoming overly agitated, she laid the groundwork first. Not anticipating that Guangzhou would prove to be so effective, accomplishing multiple objectives at once while praising him, Ms. Zhou shot me a disapproving glance, entrusted me with her handbag, and then strode away in her high heels to negotiate with the woman. I will accompany my aunt for an abortion shortly. You can wait here. Before long, Ms. Zhou took her handbag from me and departed with the woman, disappearing from sight. I quietly admired Ms. Zhou's striking presence. Yecheng suffered a blow to the occipital nerve. Despite prompt medical intervention, whether he would awaken remained uncertain, left to fate. Ms. Zhou sat by the bedside and peeled an apple for me. The apple from mother is truly sweet. I took a bite, accompanied by a flurry of compliments. Do not be coy. Now, please tell me what is going on, Ms. Zhou inquired, crossing her legs with an air of determination. I have already mentioned it, I said, blinking as I locked eyes with Ms. Zhou. After a few moments, very well, the DNA from Guangzhou was procured by me for testing, because I found him to be unattractive and rather foolish, unlike our family's genes. To my surprise, that was not the case. How peculiar. After Guangzhou ascended to power in that particular life, he expelled both me and Ms. Zhou from our home. It was only when he brought back a middle-aged couple from outside, claiming them to be his true parents, that I realized Yecheng had been wearing his green hat quite securely. Ms. Zhou sighed deeply. The college entrance examination is approaching. During this period, you should concentrate on your studies. I will handle the remaining matters, understood? I nodded repeatedly, grateful for the assistance in tidying up the mess. Before long, Yecheng was declared a vegetable. Guangzhou was imprisoned due to the accusations from Mrs. Zhou, and he would not be released for at least 10 or 8 years. Mrs. Zhou assumed her position and began to reorganize the company. I drew a large cross over the names of Guangzhou and Yecheng on the paper. Just as I was about to check the recent stock market, the table was slammed, and the female lead, who had distanced herself from the family, along with the male secondary character, stood before me. Are you satisfied now? The female protagonist questioned inexplicably. I pondered over my recent actions. It seemed I had not yet reached her. Was it you who was responsible for my brother's predicament? Even if my parents haven't contributed much, they have certainly endured their share of hardships. Why must you continue to hold this against them? It was only upon her prompting that I recalled recently sending my adoptive parent's son, who works as a thug in an underground casino, to prison. Your brother, you say? Let me ponder for a moment. I recall now. He willingly descends into depravity to become an enforcer for others. The casino has stirred up trouble, and naturally others will make him take the blame. Do they not understand the law of the jungle? Of course, it was I who instigated this. Such minds are so gullible that they would bite at an empty fishing hook. A mere pretext is enough to deceive them. You, the female protagonist, spoke, her eyes once again glistening with unshed tears. It was clearly you who instructed others to have my parents retire early, forcing my brother to take that path out of necessity. I observed the furious expression on Zaya Baiwa's face with great interest. Do you now admit that you are no longer part of the infamily? Zaya Baiwa was taken aback by my retort, momentarily at a loss for how to respond. So what? You have long been on the brink of collapse within the industry. What gives you the right to make Xiao Xin endure your hardships? Observing the indignant expression of the second male lead before me, I realized that the world's consciousness had elevated him to compensate for the deficiencies of the male protagonist. A useless, pampered son from a wealthy family, how increasingly pathetic he has become. Then please refrain from seeking my mother, if you would. You blocked my front door yesterday, forcing me to enter my home through the back. Following the incarceration of their sole son, the adoptive parents abandoned all pretense and brazenly directed the protagonist to retrieve him. The protagonist found herself at a loss. Her once steadfast support, her former partner, had been imprisoned, while her current partner was but a powerless freeloader. She was left with no choice but to beseech Mrs. Zhou. However, Mrs. Zhou was no philanthropist. The protagonist's departure during the most challenging times for the Yin family had already revealed her hypocritical nature. The door remained resolutely closed. Undeterred, she lingered at the entrance for 2 hours. A kind-hearted elderly gentleman approached, inquiring why she stood outside. With a guilty expression, she confessed to having angered her mother. The elderly gentleman, genuinely concerned, attempted to knock on the door until Mrs. Zhou revealed the truth to him. Upon realizing he had been deceived, he assisted Mrs. Zhou in expelling the protagonist, bringing the encounter to an end. The exposed protagonist's face flushed with embarrassment, and she stumbled over her words, unable to find a rebuttal, before fleeing in tears. The second male lead shot me a glare and hurried after her to console her. In stark contrast to the unscrupulous former partner, the newly positioned second male lead was remarkably more manageable. Had it not been for his sudden appearance, I might have nearly forgotten about him. A few days later, during discussions of collaboration between the in-group and the second male lead's family, Mrs. Zhou casually mentioned the current situation of the second male lead at school. The following day, he was forcibly sent abroad by his family, with his belongings left untouched, disappearing without a trace. This existence, reliant on the pests of the household, finds itself, in the face of familial interests, as the first pawn to be sacrificed. Following the disappearance of the second male lead, the protagonist gradually succumbs to silence. With the revelation of her assumed identity, these thoughtless scions of wealth turn their ire towards her. The once formidable position of student council president is stripped away, justified by a series of failures in mock examinations. The tribulations I once endured resurface in her life, albeit at a mere 20% of their original intensity. I have no intention of intervening. My conscience has long been dulled by the relentless cycles of reincarnation. This is but a fraction of what I have experienced. As the eve of the college entrance examination results approaches, I find myself at the pivotal moments of my repeated deaths, awaiting judgment in serene anticipation. Given that I have achieved this much, I am confident that even if I were to begin anew, I could once again turn the tide in my favor. As the clock approaches midnight, the computer before me signals that the examination results are available for review, yet I remain seated. In that fleeting second, I am acutely aware that I have won my gamble. After numerous attempts at the examination, my results fall within the acceptable limits. To celebrate, Ms. Zhou takes me to a restaurant on the Bund. In the serene atmosphere of the establishment, The sound of shattering glass disrupts the tranquility. Turning to investigate, I see a familiar face profusely apologizing. The protagonist, clad in a server's attire, bows her head in tears, while the manager incessantly apologizes, directing her to clean up the shattered remnants. The protagonist, oblivious to the dangers of using tape to clean up shards of glass, was soon cut by a sharp fragment, leaving her fingers wounded and tears streaming incessantly. I felt a tinge of disinterest as I diverted my gaze. The clamor behind me grew increasingly louder, prompting me to set down my knife and fork. Mother, let us find a quieter place. It is too noisy here. Very well. As the female protagonist passed by, I distinctly caught a glimpse of her pleading gaze, yet I found myself too apathetic to respond. Those who have never learned the art of self-rescue can only endure suffering.